Me not yet.
Not yet.
Hello, everyone. We're going to get started with our event tonight. Welcome to Politics and Prose Bookstore. My name's Jess. I'm the events coordinator here, where we now host in-person and virtual events, along with partnered events, trips, and classes. For a full list of everything confirmed, please go to our website, politics-prose.com. Before we get started today, I'd like to ask you to please silence your cell phones so we don't disrupt the event. And then when we get to the time to open the floor to your questions, we have placed one standing microphone right next to this pillar here. We'll ask you to ask your questions at the microphone so that everyone can hear you. And then following the Q&A, Sanaa will be signing up here at the table and talk with you. If you haven't yet got your copy of the book, we have plenty of them up at the register. So now, I'm very excited to welcome Sanaa Seif in support of Alaa Abd el Fattah's You Have Not Yet Been Defeated, selected works from 2011 to 2021. Sanaa is an Egyptian filmmaker, producer, and political activist. Imprisoned 3 times under the Sisi regime, she is currently touring the U.S. promoting her imprisoned brother, Alaa Abd el Fattah's newly published book, You Have Not Yet Been Defeated. Alaa Abd el Fattah is arguably the most high-profile political prisoner in Egypt, if not the Arab world, rising to international prominence during the revolution of 2011. A fiercely independent thinker who fuses politics and technology in powerful prose, an activist whose ideas represent a global generation which has only known struggle against a failing system, a public intellectual with the rare courage to offer personal, painful honesty, Alaa's written voice came to symbolize much of what was fresh, inspiring, and revolutionary about the uprisings that have defined the last decade. Sanaa will be in conversation tonight with Jackson Diehl. He was the deputy editorial page editor of the Washington Post until August of 2021. In a 44-year career at the Washington Post, Diehl has been a foreign correspondent in South America, Europe, and the Middle East, an assistant managing editor in charge of international coverage, and an editorial writer and columnist specializing in foreign affairs. From February 2001 until August 2021, he was the deputy editorial page editor and helped to manage the Post's editorial board and opinion staff. He continues to work with the editorial board as an editor and advisor. So now, please join me in welcoming to Politics and Prose, Sanaa Seif and Jackson Diehl.
Well, it's really an honor to be here tonight with you, Sanaa. Like so many people, I have been, as someone who follows the Middle East, in absolute awe of your family for many years. The tremendous courage, the brilliance, and just the incredible dedication to democracy and human rights that you see from you and your entire family. Sanaa's, for those of you who don't know, Sanaa's father, Ahmed Seif al-Islam, is a legendary figure in Egyptian history, who I had the honor of meeting in Cairo a number of years ago. He was imprisoned in the 1980s, tortured as an activist, but then when he came out, he dedicated himself to the rule of law and advancing the rule of law in Egypt. He founded a center in Cairo that was central to fighting legal cases and trying to create some kind of basis for genuine justice in Egypt. Sanaa's older sister, Mona, was a biologist and has been a human rights activist. Her mother is a mathematician who is also very active in political causes. And Sanaa herself is a filmmaker, but has also been in prison 3 times for a total of 3 years and 3 months for her political activism, which is pretty remarkable considering that I think she's still under 30 years old. But we're here to talk about her brother, Alaa Abd el Fattah, who really is an inspiration to so many people in Egypt, one of the most foremost political activists in Egypt, promoting a secular vision of democracy there for so many years. And he's been in prison by every single regime he has lived under. He was imprisoned by the Mubarak regime. He was persecuted by the Islamist regime that came after that. And now for 8 of the last 9 years, he has been imprisoned by the regime of Abd el Fattah Sisi. And I think for the last 47 days, he has been on a hunger strike. And his condition, I think, has been of great concern to many people. It seems to be deteriorating. And today we had what seemed perhaps to be some important news, which is that he was transferred from Tora prison, the notorious prison outside in Cairo where political prisoners are often held, to another prison north of Cairo that is somewhat more modern. It's called Wadi al-Atroun, and apparently was once touted by Sisi himself as an American-style prison. So we're wondering what that means. And if I could just start by asking you, what are you hearing and what do you think this might mean if he indeed was transferred there today?
We heard it from the news like everybody else, but and we didn't. So we don't like have a visit this week. Our visits is once a month for one family member for 20 minutes. So our visit is supposed to be in 3 weeks. But anyway, my mom went to try and get a letter, and also to like know if he's still in the prison or not. It was like we found a tweet from the Ministry of Interior, and the funny thing is that I tried to open someone sent me the tweet and said, the Ministry of Interior says, this is about your brother. I tried to open the tweet and they have me blocked. Anyway, my mom went and they told her that he was moved to Wadi al-Atroun, yes. So prisons are always like outside the city, so it's in the other side of the city, outside the city. So she couldn't make it today, so tomorrow she will go and maybe we would know. It seems like it's being, there's this propaganda that this is good news, but we wouldn't know for sure until we get like either a letter or a visit and see how know. But so the last we knew of, the conditions were very bad and the last updates were very disturbing. Like the last visit we had was a week ago, or actually maybe 9 days ago. Is that they opened the door to his cell to enter food because they don't acknowledge his strike. So he refused food as usual, and then he stepped outside his cell, demanding his right for recess, and told them according to Egyptian law, my right is 2 hours of time outside of my cell, which he's been denied for the past 3 years. And so they brought extra security and handcuffed him, and the worst part is what comes next. They didn't just put him inside his cell. The deputy warden came over and started assaulting him, beating him while he is handcuffed and tied by soldiers and on strike. And so the warden came over and yelled at the deputy warden, told him to stop. The deputy warden wouldn't. And the warden had to come over and grab the deputy warden away from Ali. And I think this is a very telling incident because it doesn't come as a surprise to us who are like, to someone who was in prison before. That I want to say it's telling because it shows how much this regime from the outside, it seems like it's a regime of control and people are buying into it because it's military stability, but no, it's not about discipline and stability. They're losing this discipline. Their men have the audacity to defy their superiors' orders in front of their superiors and in front of prisoners and in front of soldiers. It's very hectic. Their men on the ground take things on their own hands, and these are the things that really worry us. So when we hear about prisoners who die in prison, we probably assume that it's not because some high up ordered for them to die, it's because of these random hectic incidents. So I hope tomorrow when my mom goes, we discover that he is in this other facility. All what we know about not because this facility is better, we don't know, it's being PR'd is better, but anyway, we know that there are a lot of crazy officers in the facility that he's in. What we know, all I know about the Wadi Natron is that I saw like an ad, a 10-minute video of it when I was in another prison. They showed it to us, like, I don't know.
What you're missing?
Captain audience.
And yes, they said it's an American-style prison, but also the Arabic version has also very disturbing. It looks very neat, but it also has very disturbing. So, for example, they said that this is part of the rehabilitation, and as part of the rehabilitation program, there are screens in every cell, and there will be targeted media reviewed according to who is in the cell, and that there is a lot of like research being built in it. So it's concerning.
I should have said, by the way, for those who don't know, that one of the reasons for this hunger strike is that Alaa has been denied the right to read for the last 2.5 years, the right for have exercise outside. I think most of the time he's been in solitary confinement, as they were. And so he's demanding the basic rights just to have the ability to read. And when you read this book, it's just so disturbing to be reading this book written by somebody who was not allowed to read, especially since so much of it was written while he was in prison before and was allowed to read. And I wonder if I could ask you, since you've been in prison for several years and just got out in December, what does reading mean when you're a prisoner? What is the importance of that?
I just want to think he's not in solitary, but they do another trick is that, and for the two poor cellmates he had, I don't know, they also did that with me. So you cannot be put in solitary because they don't want us to kind of say that he's on solitary, so they put you with people and or isolate. So it has to. So I don't know now where he is, but he had 2 cellmates, but these cellmates were all also very isolated, and they emptied like 6 cells from the side, so they wanted to like talk to their neighbors. So they're isolated. The 3 of them were isolated for the past 3 years, but it's not like he's not in solitary. So the technicalities. Books were essential really because it's the only thing that takes you outside of the context you're in. It's the only thing. This and the radios are the only kind of things that would engage your mind. And the radio is usually full of sometimes nice music, but other than that, like really bad. Books. It was a very essential coping mechanism. I don't know how most of the coping mechanisms I had, that I used to cope with prison, relied on stuff that Alaa is denying. So I have no idea, although I was in prison, but I don't feel familiar with what Alaa is going through, because his conditions to me are unimaginable. So my day would be based on like the books. So for example, at first I wasn't allowed many, I had to negotiate my way to get books. So the first book I was allowed to was Fantastic Beasts of Art by J.K. Rowling. And I remember I had this book and I wouldn't have another for I think 2 weeks. And I remember like I split, I divided the number of pages on the number of days, and I figured I can't read more than 20 pages a day now. What do I do? So I was like, and so I decided to make like the reading time at the end of the day, so that I have something to look forward to throughout the day. So it's the only event that happens, you know. It's really essential.
Well, another experience you had that is shared with Alaa is hunger strike, because you were on a hunger strike at one time for a long time, 74 days. What is that like? How do you endure a hunger strike of that length?
Fortunately, the body kind of, in a way, helps you, but no, it's also hard. So the decision itself is, it has to be very personal, because it's, so your body is the only thing you have agency over in this. You don't have like any control over anything in your environment. So when you realize that this is the only thing you have control over, and then you want to use that control, and you want to, like, it gives you like a sense of agency. So it's a very empowering decision, but also it's a big commitment, and it's not like any empowering decision you take. It's not like taking a risk or going to a demonstration, or it's not a momentary decision. It's a commitment, and it's a long and it's a boring decision, just like anything about prison. It's long, long, long and slow and painful. So what happens really is that the kind of strike I did and Alaa did, I think we learned it from the Palestinians. It relies on water and salt, or a salt solution. The salt is supposed to elevate your blood pressure so that it maintains you alive. But then your body has to find another way to get energy. And at first, I think the first 3 or 4 days, one feels hunger like any normal person, but afterwards, somehow the body kind of adapts, understands that it's not going to get food, and you don't feel hungry anymore. And so it starts to kind of, you start to burn extra calories first, depending on your body. This phase would last long, the length of it, and then after the extra calories, the body starts to break muscle to get energy, and after the muscles, it's basically that your body is kind of self-destructing itself in the slowest and wisest way. This is what happens to you physically, but consciously, by the time you move through those phases, your consciousness, you look awake, but your consciousness kind of fades, because it's like the body's hibernating on the. So after my strike, I heard stuff from my cellmates that I don't remember at all happening, although I thought I was present all the time. So it seemed that my consciousness wasn't really working. It seemed that my awareness of stuff was vivid. But the weird and inspiring thing is that whenever even I was like semi-conscious, and I sometimes by near the end I once woke up and found that there's a cannula and that they were trying to put me on IV. Yeah, and I would refuse glucose because this is the point. I would wake up and remove the cannula. So the one thing your brain remembers is that you don't want to eat. It's like you made that decision and that's it. But in order to take it, you have to be really, really desperate, and it's like, it's really your last resort. It's a big, big commitment. And so the fact that they've managed to push Alaa this far, it's because of the lack of reading materials. I don't think anything else would have like pushed him that far, because when Alaa, before Alaa decided to be resilient and decided to kind of go the strike way, a couple of months before that, when I was in prison, he expressed suicidal thoughts, which was very unlike him. The way he said it to my aunt, he said, that was in court, he said, I feel like my brain is stopping. The brain needs input. It can't keep running on empty. I don't know it. I don't think I can endure this. So, yeah, it's a very desperate decision, but empowering in a way.
You know, if you read this book, which I recommend everyone do, it's just his extraordinary intellect really comes across, and you can see how he just absorbs things. And it's this remarkable collection of material, because it's everything from very serious, erudite essays about what the Egyptian constitution should be under democracy, to tweets and jokes, and there's an eulogy for his father that he delivered at his father's funeral when he was let out of prison for that. There is interviews. It's just an extraordinary collection of material, but it follows an arc. There's a narrative course to it, because it goes from Egypt under dictatorship to a revolution, to Egypt briefly under democracy, to Egypt back under dictatorship. And so it's fascinating to follow his thoughts through all that. And we were talking beforehand that one of the most remarkable things about his dealing with that is his honesty about what went wrong and about the failures that happened. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that, and I think you have something to read about that from the book.
Yeah, Alaa, the way Alaa deals with our uprising's defeat is, I find it very bold. All of us, or most of us at least, acknowledge the defeat, of course. It would be naive not to, but facing it without while being true to the moment of possibility, yeah, while understanding that back in 2011 and being true to that understanding, it was an actual moment of possibility, but also facing the direness of this defeat and trying to understand how it happened and trying to learn. This is I think what he does boldly. For example, I deal with 2011. I deal with the moment of hope and possibility with the night. I try not to remember those, because then the nightmare we're living in now, it would be more like, it would hurt more. But Alaa thinks there is value in facing and understanding, because he thinks that since we're destined to be like the generation that lives that defeat, at least we can give something to, can leave lessons learned to others. And that's why I think this book could be interesting for a Western audience, because you have not yet been defeated. It is like directed at the audience, not, it could be an inspiration to others who have not yet been defeated. And so maybe there is something to learn from our experience and our story there. I can read something around that idea. This is a piece called A Portrait of an Activist Outside His Prison. It was written in Tora Prison back in 2017. It's called, I'm going to just read the last part of it. It's over, we have been defeated, and meaning has been defeated with us. And just as we were in every step affected by the world and affecting it, so was our defeat, both a symptom and a cause of a wider war on meaning, a war on the crime of people searching for a supranational public sphere where they might find intimacy, exchange, communication, even quarrels, that allow a common understanding of reality and multiple dreams of alternative worlds. I'm in prison because the regime wants to make an example of us, so let us be an example, but of our own choosing. The war on meaning is not over yet in the rest of the world. Let us be an example, not a warning. Let's communicate with the world again, not to send distress signals, nor to cry over ruins or spilled milk, but to draw lessons, summarize experiences, and deepen observations. May it help those struggling in the post-truth era. For me, I gained nothing from a decade of rage except for some simple lessons. Most importantly, that every step of debate and struggle in society is a chance to understand, a chance to network, a chance to dream, a chance to plan. Even if things appear simple and indisputable and we aligned early on with one side of the struggle or abstained early from it altogether, seizing such opportunities to pursue and produce meaning remains a necessity. Without it, we will never get past defeat. I've learned that the ruling regime is just an obstacle, that the real challenges are international in nature, so seizing opportunities for debate becomes even more important when the conflicts relate to issues that transcend national borders. Finally, siding with a stronger party is generally not useful. The powerful need nothing from you but to parrot their propaganda. The weak often cause as much struggle as they suffer. Their arguments and discourses are often as brittle as their positions in society, and their diminishing chances of...
And for corporations, they wanted to ban abortion. They wanted to promote more, a stronger link between church and state in this country. They didn't choose Trump to be the standard bearer for those causes, but they signed on because of the causes. Was that so crazy after all?
No, I don't think so. I think that's a great question. And I was talking to a reporter about this earlier today. The Leonard Leos of the world, you know, he's a big pro-life advocate that's been arguing to get Supreme Court justices on. I don't think that it's crazy. I mean, they stole a Supreme Court seat. You know, I mean, the Gorsuch, the Merrick Garland seat went up in the exact same way that the Amy Coney Barrett seat did. And so I don't think over the long term that's good for the country and for the Democratic Republic, that there's a big portion of the country that rightly thinks that the seat was stolen from them, because it was. So I don't like a lot of their tactics, but I understand that. The people that are in this book are not true believing pro-life people, true believing, you know, Milton Friedman shrine people, right? Like, I get it. I mean, the people that I'm talking about are the operatives, who, on balance, like lower taxes, and on balance are for you know, abortion restrictions, you know, that are reasonable, but who know that about all the other damage that's being caused by him, and who see it, and that's not their driving motivation. Their driving motivation is winning a game. Like, those are the people that I'm condemning.
Thank you.
This is a bit of a switch, but I wondered if you could reflect on, from kind of a moral point of view, on the limits of opposition research.
Yeah.
Are there things that you really, you know, would not reveal about someone, you know, simply to gain a political advantage?
Yeah. I don't think all opposition research is bad in nature, by nature, right? Sometimes things need to be revealed, right? Politicians are stealing, or corrupt, or sexually assaulting people. Sometimes things need to be revealed, and they aren't going to be unless the opposition is looking into it, right? So I don't think that it's bad by its nature. I think where we went wrong is that we've created this political culture where everything is on. Every day we need to feed the beast, new oppo, new, you know, and a lot of times I was feeding it tongue in cheek. A lot of times it was exaggerated or hyperbole. And I think that we thought that we had control of this, right? Like, I had these little bumpers in my head where I was like, you know, if somebody gave me the Hunter Biden laptop or whatever, like, we weren't going to do anything with it. It's like the person's kid, like, unless there's something on there that demonstrated that the candidate, right? Like, we weren't going to smear people's kids. Like, we had good lines. People that worked for me at American Rising had lines. Like, there were things that we just said and sat on. But that was so naive. Right? Like, once we create this big culture of political media where all you're doing all day is demonizing and smearing other people, well, if we don't do it, then somebody else is just going to do it, right? And so I think this is where, you know, like, the culture is something that I want people that are involved in it to reflect on, right? Because even though I don't like really look back on and say, there's this one piece of oppo that I wish I hadn't done, right? It's not that. It's that, what was I doing to contribute to our political discourse by every day, like, trying to come up with, you know, something that made the other side look bad? Nothing. I wasn't contributing anything. Except for inflaming people. And a lot of the times we were feeding it. You know, I had a profile written about me back in 2013, but I really liked this. They called me puckish. I was like, hey, I'm kind of puckish. That's cool. But I look back on that now and I'm like, oh, that's cringe, actually. Like, because I was doing it, you know, kind of for kick. You know, I got a kick out of it. The people that were reading it didn't get the joke. You know, and so that's I think what I don't like.
Thank you.
Of course. And then,
hi, Olivia and Tim. Thank you for being here. Really appreciate it, and appreciate all the work that you do.
thank you.
I think probably one reason that a lot of us are here is that we have a lot of respect for the moral courage you demonstrated, Tim, in, like, breaking away from your injury. And it's respectable because it's so hard to do, and it seems like, you know, I'm ashamed to say I haven't finished the book quite yet, given...
It's out today.
Exactly.
It's okay.
But
Work to do today? What are we doing?
so apologies if you address this in the book, but it seems like, you know, respect what you're doing, and I have at the same time a ton of respect for what Liz Cheney is doing today. And obviously you drew the line at different times. But I think one of the lessons I take from that is that it's hard for all of us to draw that line, that, you know, there are group and social pressures that influence us beyond what maybe we want to do. And so I'm curious, maybe in your own reflection or in talking to other people, if you have advice for everyone to kind of introspect and think about how we can maybe be more true to our own values.
I really appreciate that question. I'd say two things. One, I say this in the book, politics is a competition still, right? Like there's no path to purity, right? Like you can't just say, I'm never going to do anything that might hurt the other side or whatever. There's only, all you can do is be aware. Like is what I'm doing within my integrity, is what I'm doing in service to actually the people that we're all here to what this is all about, like the public. And I think if people start answering those two questions, yes, then we'd be in a lot better place, right? And you can still have a spirited campaign within that construct. The other answer, just about people's personal lives, I don't know. The thing that of all the things that I've done, I think that brings me the most satisfaction is what we did in 2020, Republican Voters Against Trump. And what we asked people to do was, in their own words, as honest and candid as they could be, just send us a video. Why can we not get there? And you don't even have to be for Joe Biden if you don't want to. You can just say, I can't, this crosses a red line for me because of X. I was a Republican because of Y. And you know, there was a confessional element to that, I think, for people. Therapeutic, there's an AA, you know, watching on people who felt like we're in AA sometimes. But the people that did that, I still have great relationships with some of them. And I barely even met them. I just know them from online, but we talk all the time because that was so therapeutic for them. And I think that a lot of times people feel like, well, I shouldn't put myself out there on this because my friends are going to get mad. My experience from RVAT, some people, there were a handful of people that had bad outcomes, but the vast majority, you know, said, Tim, people came out of the woodwork, you know, maybe my father-in-law or something's mad at me now, but whatever. You know, I got more value out of it than anything else. And so I do think that like trying to cultivate honesty when we're talking about politics, social media and elsewhere, hopefully is helpful to people. It's been great for me. I'm happier than ever. I don't know. I say in the book, there's a lot of reasons to get mad about the fact that all these people that sacrificed, that went against their integrity and sacrificed nothing, like all got huge paydays. But I'll tell you, I did my interviews with them, and a lot of them are not that happy with their life right now at various levels. Yeah. And I'm pretty happy with my life. So they're miserable on a boat, but they're miserable.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah, one more. Time for one more?
Yeah.
One more?
Yeah,
Time for
yeah.
one more. Thank you.
Hi, thank you. I'm a big fan here. I
Thank you
usually
so much.
listen to your podcast twice every week, thanks to my husband.
Thank you.
So, coming from an international perspective, because I'm international, and being diplomat in DC, it's a little bit crazy to watch January 6th happening in this country. I came to this country 16 years ago from an authoritarian country, so the idea of democracy and the institutions are really, really enshrined, and I really respect that. But to watch this country sort of become a third world country, like the other country, America, is trying to help, like Iraq or wherever democracy building should do. I wonder to what degree you see American citizens take granted for the concept of democracy and the liberty, and slowly, how do I call it, erode the the diligence that they have to apply, the vigilance they have to apply to uphold the system.
Yeah.
It's just from my international perspective, it's really hard to watch and understand. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here and welcome. We have the zeal of the convert from immigrants, which I always love. They have like a greater appreciation for America than oftentimes we do. Look, I think that people learned how fragile our democracy is. I hope they did. Not everybody, obviously. Last year, you know, we were extremely alarmed, and you know, I do a lot of. I was wrong in this book, but we were really right in 2020 about how alarmed we were about this threat. And a lot of people told me, oh, well, come on, like these guys are just clowns. Like Olivia's writing the story about Rudy, and he's got dye coming down his face. He's an idiot. Like these guys aren't going to take down democracy. It came pretty close. I mean, not that close, but like pretty close. A couple things go a different way. Like, imagine if it was only one state instead of 4, right? Like, imagine if if they only needed to convince the legislature in Arizona and not across 4 states. We would have been in a really tough situation, and obviously it was bad enough as it is. So I think one of the cool things about this is that we are kind of cultivating at a certain level on the center left probably a greater appreciation and recommitment to democracy, and there are a lot of new groups that are starting because of this, and hopefully something good can come out of it in the end. But there's no doubt that we got very laissez-faire about it, and that there was confidence that this isn't this is a problem over there, and hopefully this is welcome people after that. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for coming.
Sam's book are available for sale at the checkout desk. You'll be up here signing. Please form a line to the right of the table, and please fold up your chairs. Thanks again for coming.
Hello, how are you? Okay, yeah. Yep, I will. I know.
Like more tricky because of the history and the family background, but also Alaa also offers that there is big amount of sympathy with Alaa. So I think what I feel from advocacy meetings that we just need to like revamp, re-energize all of the sympathy that the help that a lot of people showed solidarity throughout the years. We've been like in this family struggle and in this country's struggle for 9 years now. We just need to kind of re-energize everybody to try again, because now there is a window of opportunity that is open. If we let that window slide, the situation will be normalized again. But I believe now we have a window, and if it turns out that he was transferred to a better prison, even if his conditions don't improve radically, even if this is just a cosmetic act, this means that the pressure we're creating is getting through. They don't have thick skin. It's working, so it should be an indicator for us to keep pressing more and more, because I feel now we have an opportunity to free him.
And do you feel like the British government is sufficiently invested in this? Are they trying hard? Or
They seem to be taking it very seriously. They seem to be invested. So the British have this. The way they operate, there's a lot of bureaucracy on how much details they share with us. So I don't know for sure how they're going about it, but I know that they were taking the case, that they started working on the case from the very beginning. But the way they go about it is, I think, in a way naive. They don't understand the bully mentality we have in Egypt. They are going about it not. I don't think we have a problem of will here. I think we have a problem of pace and of experience with how militaries operate, or how these kinds of regime operate. So I think they were surprised the past few months, and I'm hoping they will accelerate. But also we cannot just wait still because Ala's life is in danger, not because of the strike, but also because of the hecticness I was explaining to you. And the more you come near his release or resolve, the more we have like the mostly relevant parties on the ground, like the mid-level officers who try to sabotage stuff. So the more I feel there is danger for him, that someone would take also matters in their own hands and just end it. And so I don't think the Brits understand the urgency, and for that I think that's why we're creating pressure. But today we got a very good letter that came out from the British Parliament, sent to Liz Truss, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Britain, and it was a cross-party letter, had like signatures from the House of Lords and the House of Commons. So there is support coming together.
And what about the Biden administration? Have they taken an interest in trying to make this happen? And have you been able to meet with people here about that?
I get meetings, but I don't get any public support. But I get very, very, very promising meetings, and I get messages of support, but so far I'm not getting public support.
What would you like them to do? Make a statement, or the State Department? Would that be?
I would like politicians to be bolder when they deal with the police we have back home, and I would like them to be more public. Yes, this is. I think this actually offers protection, not some politicians would feel inclined to believe that soft diplomacy, that under the table things are the ones that lead to the results. I don't think this is the case, at least with this regime.
I'm going to open it up to questions, but just before I do, I want to just ask a little bit about you. I saw on social media that you're going from here to London to meet your sister.
Yeah.
Who you haven't seen in a couple of years, is that right? Or?
No, I haven't seen her in 2 months. Or,
2 months.
Yeah, I left Cairo
But will you go back to Cairo, or are you also going to just become a British citizen?
We've all become a British citizen. I became before Alaa because of the year I was born in. My process was more straightforward. It's funny. It turned out I was already technically British. I just didn't apply for a passport. But anyways, I had a consular visit in prison. I'm going now to London to campaign. I will go back to Egypt eventually, unless our family reunites somewhere else. But if my brother is still in Egypt, I will go back to Egypt. But for now, the next step is to campaign from London, and I'm taking it step by step. I have one goal. I see that family unity is it's near. I can see that on the finish line, and so I'm taking it step by step. But if I won't be reunited with my family outside Egypt, I will just have to go back to Egypt and take my chances.
Questions? Who has a question? Yes, sir.
Hi, Sanaa. My name is Jamal Abd el Fattah from Syria. I'm a former political prisoner. I'm a friend with Alaa and Mona. I met them in Beirut. My question to you is, the story of Alaa is not only the story of Alaa, the story of Egypt, of 65,000 political prisoners of Egypt. And sometimes, that's what we think in Syria. I wish we can give everybody citizenship and just give them out of the country, but that's not our destiny, because these are our countries also. What can we do for the Egyptian political prisoners as well? We want Alaa to be free, and we want him to be safe, and we want him to be unified with his family. But also this question to Jackson, since you've written on the Middle East for decades, literally, what can we do with an Egyptian regime, like the Egyptian regime, with all those political prisoners, with no deal under the table, no pressure from outside, literally taking the country hostages till everything explodes on the face of everyone, and thousands of people just locked, including the former prisoner, the president, who died in custody, basically. Thank you.
I hope I knew, a magic answer to this question. I think we should. I don't have. I think we should continue to do the work we do. I hope politicians would push more for human rights, not just to be like on the cosmetic margin of things, that it would affect politics more, the actual politics. It should. There are many like arguments that why it should, not just for moral reasons, but given how the world works now, I don't want to be disappointing you, but because although I don't have another solution than the work that's already being done to continue it, but I feel the value of this work. So there is a reason why I'm here, and it's not just me. Like there are estimated to be 60,000 political prisoners, maybe more. We assume more, but also many of us who are outside or who get released know that if there wasn't pushback from the outside, we would all be inside, or we would all be like Ayman Hattoud maybe. So I always like to remind myself that their plans are much worse than our worst nightmares. So that we don't have the luxury to stop the pushback, and we see stuff happening on the ground. We always see small indicators that the pushback is working. We saw the raid on Madamasr, and then we saw the car make a U-turn. The car was headed to state security, and then it made a U-turn. This means that pushback is working. So I think the worst thing for us is to feel like what we're doing is useless. It's not doing the effect desired. Yes, it's very, very sad that it's not doing the desired effect, but it's not useless. They want to seem like they have thick skin. They don't. So I know this is not an answer to your question. Maybe you haven't.
I thought that was a very good answer. Who else has got a question? Yes?
Hey Sanaa, it's Courtney Raj. I've known your brother since I think 2005 or 6. I met him when I was in Egypt doing my doctoral research about cyber activism and citizen journalism. And I think one of the things that really stuck out for me about him and about a lot of the people who brought around about the revolution it wasn't about the technology, it was about how they were able to like express themselves in a way that wasn't possible because there weren't free newspapers and there, before social media, they didn't have a way to publicly express themselves. And, seeing like what Lina Tullah is doing with Madamasr, like through everything, keeping open this forum. If you accept that premise, like how, I guess this book seems so important for LA because it is a way for him to express themselves. What do you think, how did he muster the courage to like keep doing that in the walls of the prison? And like you said, he loves to read, and the fuel and he was such a leader an inspiration to so many people. And so I would just like to know, how does he keep that creativity and that expressive thing alive? And then I would love to talk to you about some ideas about how to put pressure on the British, who are also the Media Freedom Coalition founders, and it's pretty amazing that they want to carry the banner of media freedom and not speak out more publicly. Also, RightsCon is right around the corner, so we should think about how to leverage that.
And the Egyptian embassy.
I think it's a necessity for Ale. It's something that makes him alive. And part of the reason why the lack of input is getting to him is that he feels irrelevant and he doesn't feel engaged with the world. I sometimes try to explain to him that you're not as isolated. You're not as much as you get me. When we talk about stuff, I'm always surprised at how did you figure that? When did you get so? But it's. Ale is a person who likes to notice everything around him. He likes to absorb input. He likes to assess and analyze. This is how his brain works. He's kind of like my mother in a way in that, but without like the autistic part of the geeky thing. So he has the artistic, I think it's part of his character. So it's just how he is. And yeah, there is this practice of, but this is a practice that is, I don't know if it's only for Egypt, but we see it a lot in Egypt, of just the need for expression, the need for articulation, and this is something that's not just for Alaa. You know, many people express that, do that. It's a practice, and I see this is still existing. This, although like there's a big oppression and backlash happening, but the need for expression and the need for and this practice is still it still exists. You see it on social media. You see it in many forms. Yeah, but it's just we.
Can I ask you how the book, a little bit about how the book came together? Because it's very intriguing when you look at the title page. It says translated by a collective, and none of the people are named, I guess for reasons of their own personal security, right? But how did this book come together, and who edited it? How did it happen?
So this process happened when I was in prison, so I'm not, I was surprised about it as much as Alaa. But I kind of asked some questions I was curious to understand when I got out. So because the British publication came out when I was in prison, so some people, some lovely people which cannot be credited, and actually some of those people could have been credited because they're not in Egypt, but they chose all not to be because they thought this is also a gesture of solidarity, and they only wanted to forward Alaa and Alaa's voice. So it's, yes, parts of the people are in Egypt that cannot be credited, but there were people outside, and so it's a hard. The whole gesture, the whole process is so heartwarming. So yes, some people decided. Alaa never wrote. Alaa wrote pieces. Alaa would get out little pieces when the revolution was still like in a good place. He would write in local newspapers, and then there was Madame Masr. So Alaa would in prison he would leak stuff for us to like publish. So a bunch of people decided to collect his writings. Try to kind of make a selection of because the tweets and the Facebook posts were so many, and so make a selection that would kind of in a way put his writings into a narrative, and create a narrative around that through the footnotes and through the so I don't know the details about the process, how they did it. I know that they sent pieces to. So a lot of translators work, but then to like kind of overview the whole process later. It's the book itself, the process of making it, and then they contacted Naomi Klein, and then Naomi Klein agreed from the beginning just because it's a prisoner's book. But then she told me that later when I got out and we talked, she said she said to be honest with you, I didn't believe this was like a valuable book. I just agreed because this is an act of solidarity. But then when the book was sent to me, my reasons for accepting totally changed. So it's the whole process of it was really inspiring. And this is part of what makes, so our family is going through a lot, obviously, but the only way we endure this is through these lovely, lovely forms of solidarity, which it's sad that we cannot even talk about. We cannot, some of the things that people do, we cannot even, I cannot even talk about, they cannot be credited for, but it's amazing that people would go to that length and would commit to helping us. This is not our first year in this tragedy, this is our 9th year, so, and people continue to show forms of support and solidarity like this book.
Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Hi, I'm Cynthia Schneider from Georgetown University. I knew your brother just a little bit in Cairo in 2012-ish years. And just thank you so much. And I so admire your spirit and, continued optimism. It's really, really inspiring. And keep going. At the same time, it is to me so discouraging that what you say about the Biden administration is not wildly surprising, but is discouraging. And, in terms of the way the world is interacting with Egypt, it seems to be going in just exactly the wrong way. I mean, they're now going to host the COP, whatever it is, 2000 meeting. And, they seem to be, far from being censored in any way or punished in any way. It seems to be just the opposite. So I would love for you to talk, and you also, Jackson, if you would mind, in sort of Alaa related to Egypt now. Is Sisi still as popular as ever? And I know most of Alaa's comrades from the revolution are out of the country for their own safety. I mean, is he still as popular as ever? And both of you, do you see any hope or any chance, or what can we do to have the world get more behind him and the other prisoners and pressure Egypt to do something about this?
So he's not as popular. So back, for example, in 2013, Sisi was popular. He didn't have to have these elections. If it were democratic elections, he would have probably won. Definitely, he's not having that popularity, but he does have a radical base. But also, I have to say, this is also like an assessment that could be wrong, because Egypt could be misleading, Cairo could be misleading, and we don't have any tools to have proper statistics or proper. So this is just how I sense. So because of the economic situation, and the economic situation is really worsening, and because of everything, the oppression, he's not as popular, and the mass popularity, this is gone. But he does have a radical base that is also affiliated with the Mosoleh interests, and it doesn't say, and it's the regime is very, very unstable, but this instability, it could be misleading. It's not, when we say the regime is unstable, it doesn't mean like it's going to be overthrown or anything. It could stay unstable like this for a very long time. It's deeply causing problems in the country, like rooting.
Well, I think we have to wrap up soon, because I know Sanaa wants to have some time to sign some books for those of you who want to have a word with her. But I would just add to that I think we may see trouble in Egypt soon. And the reason is Ukraine, and the fact that Ukraine is unable to export its grain. And if you look at what's happening in Sri Lanka, if you look at what's happening in Iran, where they're having food price riots, it reminds you of what happened in Egypt back in 2006. When you had riots over food prices started, it led to the Kafaya movement, and then 5 years later there was a revolution. And I wonder if we aren't going to come back here full circle, partly because of the trigger being food prices in Ukraine.
The difference so there was a lot of grassroots and work and built-up work that led to, even before Kafaya, but also, yes, Kafaya was post-war, but the environment was different. The fear we have is that, other than the economic situation is really, really dire, and it looks like it's going to become much worse. So this is horrible, of course, but also that if whatever erupts, there is energy. When you have a built-up work and grassroots work, and this is what happened in 2011, it kind of directs this energy to something maybe positive. We don't know now with the changes with the amount of oppression and the changes they are doing to the country deeply. When we know something is inevitable to erupt at some point, maybe not in our lifetimes, maybe in our lifetimes, who knows. The one thing we learned about 2011, but nobody knows. It's a moment, it's going to happen. You just have to be prepared for it. We know we're not prepared for it. We know they're not allowing for an environment of preparation for it, and so it's really worrying. But
On that that sober note, thank you very much for taking the time to speak and to me tonight.
And thank you all for
Thank you everyone for attending. The line for signing will start over here by the pillar, and we do ask that you please fold up your chairs and set them against something sturdy just to help us. Thank you.